Take 213. No, just kidding. I just feel like this is a lot of takes, but it's worth it. It is so worth it. Trust me. Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Explore Report. In this Explore Report, we're going to be covering Amatol, New Jersey. And Amatol, New Jersey actually has two areas of interest. The first area of interest is where the munition plant used to be. And I say used to, we'll get into that detail in a minute. And where the village is, and that is located approximately 2 miles away from where the plant used to be. So what I'll do is I'll talk about Amatol, the munitions plant area first, and talk about the layers of history that's there. And then we'll go into the Amatol village and what exactly was there. One of the questions was how many people did the village have? And thank you very much, DD Explorers, for that question. Just so you know, I will pose questions for any Explore reports maybe about 2 weeks ahead of time in a community tab. This gives me time to collect the questions, give you time to actually see the community tab and what's going on and stuff like that. Once I actually go to edit it, I'll have everything in order. It could be questions, it could be like statements or something like that. That's fine. And what I'll do is I'll post a print screen of your question in this video. We're also going to be discussing what happened in this Explore. Not anything major, but just to give you like a little bit more detail as to actually on how some of our explores actually go. It may be interesting, it may be cool, it may be like a haha moment. That's fine. So we'll do that, and then I'll try to get any satellite images that are there now. I did purchase an aerial photo of the village portion, so we'll be discussing that, of where the village portion used to be. So we'll get into that. And also, yeah, so just a couple details, and yeah. So to kick it off, I'd like to say that Bob, I, and the kids were there back in 2017, and we only explored the munitions portion itself. To start off, what you see in the munitions area are what we believe are the pouring rooms. These are the two large structures that are a set. There's actually two sets of these structures. The first set, the one that you see in the video, is actually on public lands. The second set is actually on private lands, and I do believe that private land is owned by a gun club. I'm not entirely sure, but it is safe to actually hike back there. Note that 2/3 of where the track itself is the public side. 1/3 of that is the private land, and they do have signs that are posted. So if you go there, make sure that you park where there's no signs posted. So Amatol was built in 1918, and it was actually built towards the end of World War I. A lot of the structures that were there were made of wood. So what you see today are only the concrete remains of where Amatol used to be. The set buildings, the two sets of buildings that you see in the video, we believe were the pouring rooms, where Amatol was actually poured. And then you have the gully, which I do believe was either a water system or where they actually moved the munitions once where they were loaded. I haven't been able to clarify the gully portion yet. Bob and I did find, on the second trip, Bob and I did find an area, it was a small area, where it looked like they had mounted machinery because they had the mounting bolts, but also they had the pits below. They were shallow pits, they weren't really deep. The Amatol plant only lasted a few months, so it was originally built in July of 1918. And the war was over that November, so it only lasted a couple months. There were actually several large wooden structures there, in addition to the concrete remains you see today. When it came time to tear down everything, they focused on the wooden structures. that was the Amatol munitions portion. Now the second layer of history is they actually built a speedway there, and it was a wooden speedway. It was East Coast's largest wooden speedway. So the racetrack was built in 1926 by Charles Schwab. He had actually purchased the land to build this racetrack. The racetrack actually did really, really well at the beginning. But as years went on, people started losing interest. The owner, Charles, he started losing interest, and it just started to deteriorate after that. So in 1933, they actually tore it down, but they repurposed the wood. I don't know exactly where they repurposed the wood, but it wasn't exactly torn down. It was just taken down, and then they used the wood somewhere else. The raceway itself was a 1.5 mile oval. They didn't have many races. It wasn't exactly short-lived because it was built in 1926. They started having races in 1927, and it wasn't torn down until 1933. So I had a couple years there, but I could only find that they had 8 races there. So it wasn't used very much. So after a couple years, after the raceway was demolished, the area actually turned into a trash site. It was a short-lived trash site, but you can still find like really old bottles there. Danny and I had found some old Pepsi bottles, and lucky enough had found old Pepsi bottles with the caps still on. Now I'm one not to take one from abandoned places, but it was a trash site. This is an exception. I think it's an exception. So yeah, that was actually really cool. So that's the layers of history that you have where the munitions plant was. Note the factory itself is not there. So you have the Amatol munitions, you have the raceway, and then you have the trash dump. So now on to the village, which was built 2 miles away. Why was it built 2 miles away? Is because Amatol is highly explosive. Anything were to go wrong and that area exploded, the village people would be safe. So once again, if you go into Google Earth on where the village was, you can actually see where the roads were. They're dirt trails now, but it's very interesting because there were actually a lot of roads there, and it's very cool. So if you go into Google Earth and you click on the timeline tab, Google Earth, not Google Maps, because Google Maps doesn't have the timeline thing to where you can go. What the timeline thing does is it allows you to go through what year they have a satellite image of that area, and you can actually get to a year where it might have been winter, where they got the satellite photo, and you can actually see a lot more than you would a summer photo. Another cool thing is that there's actually remnants of the village itself. We found chimneys, we found portions of walls, not really large, maybe like a foot off the ground. And there's probably more back there because we didn't actually scan the entire area. We had a lot to do that day. So now we'll get to Dee Dee's question, and Dee Dee's question was how many people lived in the village. And believe it or not, actually 10,000 people lived in the village itself. Really cool. There was all sorts of buildings. There were types of buildings. There were like dormitories. There was even a church. It was really cool. And to see it now, to where it's just like the Pine Barrens. It's weird because I'm trying to imagine a whole entire village in this area, and there's very little left, but there are things left. So now we'll go into the portion of what happened that day. This is a very good lesson learned for me. Apparently I am very sensitive to these insects called chiggers, and they're found a lot in the Pine Barrens. I had actually forgot the bug repellent that day. So we're both exploring the Pine Barrens with no bug repellent on. Yes, we did pull tons and tons of ticks off, and luckily I had a lint roller in my car, so I took the lint roller out and we were just pulling off ticks left and right. We must have had 50 ticks on us each. It's not that we were going through like the high grasses or anything. It's they must have been hiding in the leaves. It was a really good infestation of ticks. Now chiggers, on the other hand, I hate them more than ticks, believe it or not. Now I know you can get like Lyme disease. It's a very debilitating disease you can get from ticks. I've been very, very lucky so far. So I really don't want to get it. It was just really unintentional that I forgot the bug spray. So we went exploring anyway. So we explored both portions, the village portion and the munitions portion. And in the munitions portion, on Google Earth, I saw more stuff way down, maybe like maybe not 3 miles down, maybe more like 2 miles away from where the ruins were. And I couldn't exactly tell what it was from Google Earth, so it was just one of those feet on the ground type of things where we went back and tried to hike back there. The thing was, it was really hot that day. We did have water, so Bob and I kind of struggled, not only exploring the village and exploring the munitions. We already walked miles and miles, and now we're going to walk a couple miles more in the back. Not sure what we were going to find, and it was just like a dead end. There is something back there, we couldn't get to it. I know we took the right trails. I had the GPS going. It was just really strange. So maybe again in the future, if I return there with friends, and if they're up for the long hike, I might try to check it out again. But it would have to be like during a late fall or winter when everything's died back. Alright, so that covers this edition of the Explorer Report for Amatol. And thank you all so much. See y'all later. Bye.